Thank you for joining the Mindfulness Toronto Professional Community Meeting this month. Welcome to all our returning community members and all of you who are new joining us today. I'm so pleased to be able to provide the space for us to connect. My name is Dr. Denise Panaduro, and I'll be hosting our session. And Nava, hopefully, will be co-hosting our session. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Kate Dunn-Flynn as our community speaker for her session entitled Mindful Tech, Reclaiming Presence in a Digital World. We will explore how mindfulness can help us navigate digital spaces with intention and balance. We'll learn practical strategies to cultivate awareness, reduce tech-induced stress, and foster deeper connection with ourselves and others. Kate Dunn is a professor of sociology at Conestoga College. She holds a master's degree in sociology from Western University and has nearly 2 decades of teaching experience at the post-secondary education level in interdisciplinary studies. She obtained her certification in Unified Mindfulness in 2022 and has both taught and developed courses focused on positive psychology and digital wellness. Her written work has been featured in the London School of Economics and Political Science, Gender and Society, Contemporary Sociology, and the Canadian Journal of Sociology. Katie is a strong advocate for mental health and well-being, and she's also the founder of Rooted in Wellness Canada, an online platform committed to sharing the principles of positive psychology and enhancing and fostering a culture of positive mental health within the community in which she lives and works. To discover more information on Kate's work, you can visit www.rootedinwellnesscanada.ca, and we'll share this link with you in the chat box. Kate, it is a pleasure to welcome you today to Mindfulness Toronto, and please let me pass over the floor to you to begin.
Thank you so much for that very generous and lovely introduction, Denise. I really appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, so much for having me today. So I'm just going to get our slides ready. And I am working on 2 screens this morning so that I can see all of your faces at the same time as working through some of our slides. So again, thank you so much for having me this morning. This is a topic that I am very passionate about. So we are going to be talking about digital wellness today. And before I sort of jump into digital wellness, I do want to take a moment just to acknowledge an amazing woman that I had the pleasure of being friends with and working with for many years that invited me into this space back in 2023. Her name was Lisa Pender. She was a professor, she was a sociologist, she's a digital wellness expert, and she was a huge champion of digital wellness and worked in this space until she passed away in March. So I just wanted to take a moment to just acknowledge the amazing work that she did and that she pioneered at Mohawk College. And wherever she is today, maybe she's listening, and I hope to make her proud. So, this is just such an important topic of conversation because we all have devices that we rely on. We all have devices that we utilize and that we use to keep us safe, that we use to keep us connected, and that we use with the intention of keeping us more productive, although sometimes that doesn't always happen. But there's something about using these devices that can feel at times like it's a bit of a time trap. Or for many of us, it's pulling us away from things that we would really like to do more of, but that we feel like we can't because our devices are competing with our time. So we hold this tension between really loving our tech tools, but sometimes not liking the way that they make us feel. And the problem isn't the tools themselves, but our relationships with them. So today we're going to explore first sort of half of the workshop will be exploring just how our use of technology impacts us physically, mentally, and emotionally, and how this can contribute to feelings of stress and overwhelm, maybe feeling busy but not productive, maybe contributing to a feeling of burnout, and then even just the physical aspects of using our devices, where we might have eye strain or we might feel a lot of tension in our neck and our shoulders, and leading more physically but also socially sedentary lives. And then the second half is we are going to talk about some healthy digital habits that we can start to implement that will restore more of our sense of control and just improve our overall relationship with our devices, whether that be your cell phone, your laptop, your iPad. Just sort of conjure up to mind what are one of the devices that you seem to lean on most while we're talking about technology. So I always like to start any conversation about digital wellness with this question. And I would invite you to unmute yourself, or you can certainly type in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable doing. But if you could add 15 extra years to your life, how would you spend your time? What would you spend your time doing?
Hi, my name is Paul, and I'll go quickly.
Thanks,
Um,
Paul.
I would travel a lot more and connect, like real connection with real people.
Yes, it's great. Real connection, like face to face.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I'm noticing it in the chat. Erin is also saying traveling. Fadi is saying following passions. Gina is saying travel and walking in nature. Anybody else?
I'm thinking I'd like to spend time more with friends and family.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Ben. Veronica is saying
Uh,
traveling.
My name's Gregory. I would want to practice being present.
Wonderful. It's a great goal. Thanks, Gregory. And Eleanor is saying, following my passion combined with spending time with friends and family and connecting. So we're all really on the same page. And when I ask this question, the most common responses are all of the ones that you've listed. Traveling's, engaging more in hobbies, spending time with loved ones. I've never heard anyone say I would spend more time on Instagram or watch more YouTube videos or take more Zoom calls or stay on Teams more. That's never been a response. But we spend a lot of time on our devices. And you might be wondering why I've specifically asked 15 years. So the average Canadian will spend 70.46 days a year on their mobile devices, or roughly 15 years of their life, if they use mobile devices for 75 years. And what we've noticed is our use of mobile devices has increased by almost 80% since 2019. And obviously, this is going up incrementally every year. And according to the most recent data that was conducted by Statista back in 2024, Canadians spent 4 hours and 38 minutes on mobile apps per day. So we are spending about 4.5 hours roughly using our devices. And some of us, if we were asked, what are you spending your time doing? Would we be able to audit our time and say, oh, I spent an hour checking email. Oh, I spent 30 minutes on Instagram, and then I spent 45 minutes on a Zoom call. Maybe some of us would be able to, but a lot of us, we wouldn't be able to do that. And so the recognition here is that we can't escape technology. And a lot of us wouldn't want to, even if we had the choice. It can be very convenient. It can make us more productive, more efficient. It can connect us, and it can be very inspiring and fulfilling when we use it in balance. But our relationship with modern technology is really complicated. So we need to find this balance between having a digital life and having an in-person life, and being more mindful as opposed to mindless when we use it. So what does digital wellness actually mean? So digital wellness is a combination of sort of an optimal state of health and well-being that we can achieve while we're using technology. It allows us to take advantage of all of the benefits that technology has to offer, which is being creative, connecting, collaborating, being productive, but at the same time, avoiding any associated harms or risks that might be associated with an overindulgence or using too much of it. And I also like to think about digital wellness as being part of the wellness wheel. So we know that wellness is holistic and it's comprised of different elements. It's comprised of, occupational wellness, physical wellness, social wellness, spiritual wellness, financial. So considering how digital wellness might fit into that wheel. And then the second thing is it's a mindful and intentional approach to technology use. And we know that we are mindful when we are aware of our thoughts and feelings right now in this present moment. We're not ruminating about the past. We're not anxious or worried about the future. We are present. And we will do an activity a little bit later on, a cell phone meditation that's really interesting that will bring us back to the present moment. And digital wellness, I might also add here, is not just a nice to have anymore, it's a need to have because a lot of us are not using our devices in ways that are sustainable. So we really need to dramatically broaden our understanding of what well-being looks like in our work environment, in our home environment, because the relationship that we have with our tech devices at work is sometimes definitely mirrored in terms of how we use it at home. And so that means really prioritizing our digital wellness. So it's an imperative to incorporate digital wellness in our lives. And some of the sort of habits, behaviors, and beliefs that we might hold that are impeding our digital wellness. And as I'm sort of working through these, you might be thinking, yes, definitely, this is something that I'm engaging in, and I want to be more mindful about not doing this anymore, or maybe quite as much as I currently am. So the first is the most obvious, which is excessive screen time. If we're spending a lot of time on our phones, on our tablets, our computers, and we're not taking breaks, so if we're not actually physically getting up from behind the computer, going for a walk in the neighborhood, or if you're working on campus or at a place of employment, going for a walk during your lunch hour, or implementing the 20-20-20 rule that our ophthalmologists always remind us of whenever we go and get our eyes checked, are you taking breaks away from your screen? A lot of us are experiencing things like eye strain, but also a sedentary lifestyle, which we know can result in things like obesity, but also sleep disturbances. One of our worst habits is checking our phones as soon as we wake up, and then it's, just before we go to bed, and that is impeding with our sleep. So if you're checking your phone just before you go to bed, the blue light that's emitted by screens is interfering with the production of melatonin. And we know that that's a natural hormone that's helping us to regulate our sleep. And so checking your phone just before you go to sleep is leading to poor sleep quality, and it can also be contributing to insomnia. So if you find yourself sort of tossing and turning, that could be the culprit. I always say banish your phones from the bedroom. Don't use it as your alarm clock. Go the analog route. Get an analog clock for your bedroom. The other thing that sort of comes part and parcel with the excessive screen time piece here is that our phones are packed with subtle positive reinforcements that trigger the release of dopamine. And dopamine is a feel-good hormone that keeps us coming back for more. And so developers are very, very smart in that they pack these apps full of positive reinforcements. If you touch a link and a web page instantly appears, or if you send a text message and you hear that really satisfying whoosh, or you receive a text message and you hear a ping, cumulatively, all of these reinforcements give us a pleasant feeling. And it also gives us a feeling of control. And that makes us want to constantly be on our devices. And there's another device that uses intermittent rewards to drive excessive and compulsive behavior. Can anyone guess what that is? It's one of the most addictive devices. Any guesses? Veronica, you are correct. It is a slot machine. Slot machines are specifically designed to deliver rewards in a way that drives excessive and compulsive behavior. So you just keep doing something because it's part of habitual nature, right? And it's one of the most addictive devices ever invented. So essentially, we have these tiny little slot machines on our desks and in our pockets. So no wonder we are engaging in it excessively. The second is phubbing. Phubbing is a combination of the words phone and snubbing. And so phubbing is the act of snubbing someone in a social setting by looking at your phone instead of paying attention to the person that you are having a coffee with, or you're sitting down with, or you're sharing a meal with. And we have either phubbed someone or we have been phubbed. And maybe part of your homework tonight is going out, taking a walk, and seeing how many people are on their phones, but how many people are on their phones in maybe a social setting. So they're walking with someone, but they're on their phones. And how we can't connect with someone if we are on our phones because our attention is fragmented. We're looking at our phones and we're also trying to pay attention to the words that our partner or friend or roommate or whoever we're walking with is telling us and sharing with us. And it has an impact on our relationships. The third is just an over-reliance that we have or dependency on technology. And being overly dependent on anything is going to impede our feeling of wellness and well-being. It can definitely disrupt our daily routine or goals that we have that we want to implement around a routine. It can negatively impact personal relationships. It can negatively impact work performance and obviously our emotional well-being. And it can increase feelings of social isolation, as well as just any negative effects that we might be feeling on our mental health, but also our physical or our social health as well. And there's a host of reasons why we are becoming overly reliant or dependent on technology, but I think the biggest is just convenience. Technology makes many tasks very easy for us and more efficient if we're using them in ways that are of benefit to us. So if we're using them to communicate in a way that, maybe we have no other option but to use our tools for this. If there's a time difference or if there's geographical boundaries, then communicating with people is important and it's a wonderful way to utilize Teams or Zoom. We use it for navigation. We also use it for shopping, right? And so we might also feel pressure to constantly be connected or to stay up to date on what others are doing because of the rise of social media and messaging platforms. But we may also rely on it as a form of escapism, depending on our relationship with our work, for example. Or we may use it to help us cope with stress. We also see an over-reliance on digital validation and social comparison, especially among younger generations. And it feels really good to be affirmed. So if you post something online, somebody likes your post, it feels good. But if a person is constantly seeking that online validation through likes, through comments, through engagement, that's going to impede our digital wellness, especially if our self-esteem is tied solely to digital interactions. It is either going to create or exacerbate feelings of anxiety, depression, low self-worth, especially when our expectations are not met. So if we're constantly comparing ourselves to people on social media or in any sort of digital community, that's going to further compound some of the health issues that we're already experiencing. And it may create feelings of just inadequacy, jealousy, stress, depression, and just negative self-perception overall. We're also experiencing a pretty significant lack of digital balance. So if we're not maintaining a balance between the amount of time that we're spending online versus offline, so for example, if we're neglecting physical exercise, if we're not engaging in face-to-face social interactions or personal hobbies, that's going to lead to not just physical sedentary lives, but socially sedentary lives. A lot of my students, they talk about FOMO, or the fear of missing out. So they feel this constant need to be connected um, in terms of digital interactions because they might miss out on events or invitations. And that can create a sense of anxiety or stress or dissatisfaction with life. It also pulls us away from the present moment and engaging in actual face-to-face experiences. And some of us have become convinced that the only way to protect ourselves is to constantly check our phones, constantly be checking our emails or social media accounts to make sure that we're not missing out on something, especially if you work from home. You might feel like you always need to be on and connected in case a colleague needs you or a manager needs you, or you might be getting, delegated work. And so what happens is that FOMO, that tech-induced FOMO, is increased to the point where our adrenal glands are releasing cortisol, which we know is a stress hormone that plays a huge part in our fight or flight response. Every time we put down our phones, cortisol makes us feel anxious. We don't like to feel anxious. So in order to relieve that anxiety, we reach for our phones again, or we check our emails, or we refresh the website that we're on, or recheck our social media. We feel better for a moment, we put our phones down, we feel anxious again. So there's this negative feedback loop. And so instead of worrying about FOMO, can we reframe and can we shift to JOMO? JOMO is the opposite of FOMO. JOMO is the joy of missing out. So it's embracing the idea of being fully present, intentional, mindful, finding joy and contentment by being disconnected from that constant digital stimulation, focusing on more meaningful, fulfilling activities. And one of the most common misconceptions around technology is that it saves us time. How many people here actually think that your devices are saving you time? Anybody? So there's this myth of multitasking. And we're not actually multitasking at all. We are switch tasking. And what that leads to is something known as attention residue. So it takes us an average of 23 minutes to refocus anytime we are interrupted or we're distracted or we're checking something on our phones when we're meant to be working, or we're checking our email at the same time that we're working. Our attention is fragmented and constantly being pulled in a multitude of directions. And then the last piece here is this hashtag that I'm seeing and I'm hearing about all the time, which is hustle and hustle culture and productivity. And having goals and being productive is really, really important. But this idea of hustling all the time is very indicative of the world that we live in. We dread idleness and we often conflate rest with being lazy. We look at being unproductive as being a very bad thing. And many of us feel like we have to earn rest, despite rest being a physiological need. It's very much required in order for us to show up as our best selves. And if we are busy all the time, we can't perform the self-maintenance that's needed to really thrive in our personal lives and also our professional lives. And what's really interesting here in the research is that having more time isn't necessarily the solution. Many of us are leveraging time-saving tricks to free up more time, but then we will use that time for everything but self-care. So maybe we're focusing on other responsibilities that we have. We're catching up on errands, we're catching up on chores, or we're using that time to engage in more entertainment. We don't necessarily view that free time as the time needed to really prioritize our own wellness. And as a follow-up to this, I would ask, how long do you wait until you recharge? Most of us treat our laptops and our phones and any other devices that we use better than our own physical and mental selves. People that I work with, students that I teach, If their battery hits a certain percentage, they are asking, where can I find the nearest outlet? They're running to charge their phones or their devices. But if we compare this to our own personal batteries, we will let our personal batteries drop a lot lower than 60%, 50%, 40%, 30%. Sometimes we wait until we hit 10%, 5%, 2%, or if we hit 0% and we've just burned ourselves out. So periods of rest are required for really great work. Rest is not a reward. It's a physiological requirement, and we have to prioritize taking regular mind and body breaks when we work with our technology. And this brings us to a really great way to implement some micro breaks in ways that engage our parasympathetic nervous system, which is mindfulness. So oftentimes I'll talk about our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. And the way to think of about that is sort of comparing it to a car. So in a car, you always have a gas pedal and you have a brake pedal. The gas is to go, that's your drive system. So that's having goals, that's being motivated, being productive, working towards something, helping your team. Your parasympathetic nervous system is part of your soothing drive. It's your brake pedal. It's engaging in self-care practices. It's slowing down. It's being more mindful. So mindfulness, as we all know, is a really great way to sort of slow down, come back to the present moment, but it's a great way to practice digital wellness. And we know that there's a ton of benefits out there when it comes to engaging in mindfulness, having a mindfulness practice. It decreases our stress levels. It lowers our blood pressure, our heart rates. It increases our self-awareness, our attention, our focus, concentration. It lowers anxiety. It even helps us improve our emotional regulation, and it engages that parasympathetic nervous system, which we don't spend enough time in. So not only does mindfulness help us get better at staying in the present moment and noticing our feelings and sensations in our body, but it also enables us to recognize some of the fears or emotions or drives or desires that are driving our use of technology. The important piece around this is knowing the what. So if you're trying to cut back on your tech use without first figuring out what you're trying to achieve or avoid, you are likely not going to cut back on your usage. Or maybe you will at first, but this is not something that will be of regular practice. So let's say, for example, that you catch yourself reaching for your phone. Practicing mindfulness means that instead of trying to fight the urge or criticizing yourself for having it, you simply notice the urge and then follow up with questions for yourself. So, what does the craving feel like in your mind? Maybe you have a question that pops up for yourself, or maybe there's racing thoughts at the temptation of this phone and the resistance that you might feel. What does the urge feel like in your body? Why do you think you might be having this urge? Is it out of boredom? Is there a goal that you might be achieving if you reach for your phone and you check it? What reward are you hoping to receive? Or what discomfort are you trying to avoid altogether? And what would happen if you reacted to that impulse versus what would happen if you didn't react at all? So coming back to these questions on a regular basis are really important. And that leads us to our first activity or practice, which is a cell phone meditation. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You might already have your phone next to you, or you might have to call to mind your cell phone if it's away in another room, in which case, good for you, bonus points. You're already practicing digital wellness. For those of you that might not heavily use your cell phone, you might want to bring to mind another device that you're relying on heavily. Maybe it's your iPad, maybe it's your laptop. And you can reflect on these questions yourself, just think about them. Or you can write down any words or thoughts or phrases that might come to mind. So if you have a pen and a pad of paper, you can jot down those feelings or those thoughts. So as with any meditation practice, I invite you to close your eyes, although this is certainly not a requirement, or you can just sort of look down, whatever feels comfortable for you. So the first question that I will ask you is I want you to think about your cell phone or again, any device that you use most often. What are some feelings or thoughts that arise in your mind and body as you think about this device? And again, feel free to write down some words or some thoughts that you're having if you're making notes. The second question that I'll ask you is if you're able to, take out your phone or the device that you use most often and hold it in your hand or place your hand on top of it. If you don't physically have it in front of you, that's okay. You can call it to mind. And again, thinking about any feelings or thoughts that might be arising in your mind or your body. The third question that I have is I want you to turn on the device and open your email inbox. Again, if you don't have it physically in front of you, that's okay. You might imagine opening your inbox, scanning the subject lines in the inbox, but don't open any of the messages. You're just scanning right now. And feel free to write down any words or thoughts, again, if you're making notes. Now I want you to open and read a message. You can respond to it if you feel so inclined. Again, if you don't have it physically in front of you, that's okay. You can imagine opening an email message, thinking about what you might write out as a response to that email, and writing down or thinking about any words or thoughts that come to mind. And then the last question is I want you to put your phone away or put the device you used or thought about for this activity away. If you're thinking about your laptop, please don't close your laptop. Stay on the call. Um, but you might visualize putting it away or putting it aside for the moment. And as you put your phone away or the device that you used or thought about for this activity away, what arises in your mind or body when you do this? And if you're making notes, you can write down some of the thoughts or words that might pop up for you. So, as part of our debrief, I would love to hear some of the observations that you made or things that you noticed or wrote down when you engaged in this meditation. Would anyone like to share? Again, you can unmute yourself, you can type your experience in the chat if you'd like. What are some of the things that came up for you? I see Lynette, you've raised your hand. Would you like to share?
Yeah, I've recently had knee surgery and so have been confined to home more than I would normally be. I can't drive. Um, it's been very uncomfortable. So I've been using mindfulness a lot, but have had to rely on my cell phone much more for contacting, transportation to get me to doctor's appointments, physio, taxis to take me shopping, stuff like that. And I don't like being that dependent on using my phone as much as I have been doing. So I'm looking forward. Hopefully next week I will get the clearance to drive again. Um, and then I won't need to use my phone as much.
That's excellent. So you're using it in ways that's mindful as opposed to mindless, or would you say it's a combination of both, or
No, it's absolutely mindful because I have to phone the taxi to pick me up. I have to phone if they don't turn up, where are they? Because I need to be at my physio appointment on time. So, no, I am using it mindfully, but I'm using it much more than I would normally do if I was out and about talking with people face to face.
And how does that feel for you?
Oh, I don't like it because I don't like having to rely on my phone. I'm not connected intravenously to my phone, but I've had to use it much more than I would normally do.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that experience, Lynette.
Welcome.
Gregory, I see you're unmuted. Did you
Yeah,
want to share? Thank you.
sure. I mean, the 5 words I scribbled as you were unfolding the meditation um, did not surprise me. My first one was, how do you feel about your cell phone? Resentment was the word that came to mind. And then when you asked me to open it up, the second words were captured and chained. The third was, how do I feel about, opening up scrolling through the messages that were on my phone. Of course, anxiety was the next. And then you asked about opening up a message, and the first thing that hit me was, oh my God, I got to do this. That cortisol hit that you'd mentioned before.
Mhm.
And then when you asked me to put the phone away, what was my experience? uh, the experience. I've had this experience before too. There's an emptiness. There's a sense of weirdly being free, but feeling guilty about being free.
I love the words that you picked there, captured and chained, and then freedom, but constrained freedom in a way. And that's that feedback loop because the wonderful hit of dopamine that we get when we check our phone, and then the cortisol spike that we get, depending on the email that we might be receiving or feeling that we need to respond to, especially in a meditation activity, right? With a limited amount of time, I'll respond to this email as quickly as you can. Depends on the email you get, right? And then putting it away is this feeling of, oh, I can, take a breather. I don't have to think about it. But at the back of your mind, that email may still rest somewhere in the matrix of your brain, feeling like you have to come back to it at some point.
But it was also feeling guilty
Mm.
that I put it away.
And why do you think you felt guilty?
Oh, that I should be connected. That everyone's expecting me to be connected. That everyone's expecting me to respond immediately. To be chained.
The should.
They
We
should.
should be doing this.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm confabulating stories in my head about needing that cell phone.
Yeah. Thank you, Gregory. Gina, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Hi, yes, I'm Jigna.
Jigna. Thank
Yes.
you. Would you like to share?
Yeah, I really like the subject for today.
Hmm.
Uh, I I have a little different perspective as I have learned over a period of time how to manage my cell phone. I have started learning that I have started writing more,
Hmm.
and I have used the cell phone as a mode of communication to collaborate thoughts, to take time to respond. And if someone takes time to get back to you, probably that person is also taking time to respond as a meditation, which happens. I personally find that it's a beautiful play.
Hmm.
It's a beautiful play between two ends where both people are taking time to respond. And I have learned to read better. I have learned to understand different kinds of writings.
Hmm.
It has opened a different space for me. So if someone has reached out to me, I feel so happy about it that someone thought that I could be a person to feel connected with. So for me, I have grown over a period of time to understand this aspect of how I could use this technology mindfully. And it also offers me opportunities where people say, could we just catch up over a phone call?
Mhm.
As post-COVID, it has become challenging for people to commute, to travel. Um, and it actually helped me to develop a schedule rather than being on a roller coaster and making choices. What is a priority? Um,
Mm.
how can I be of best help in this sequence of emails, or even when I'm seeing some, I also like to scroll on Instagram, but I see a wide perspective of emotions. I see a wide perspective of how people are collaborating in this
Mm.
space, which is all in the universe, you know. It's not in person, but it's a universal collaboration. There was a time when I was really afraid of writing. There was a time when I was afraid I have not understood what someone has written to me, but I've given myself the time to pace through this process where I don't have to be put on the spot,
Mm.
and I can take my time to reframe my situation. So
That's a
thank
lovely That's a lovely perspective. I love that. And as you were talking about it, how you engage mindfully as opposed to mindlessly, which we're talking about, the dual nature of those two things, right? Is much like Gregory's perspective. When I check my email, I feel like I need to immediately respond because someone might need me. And my response is hinged on a person's need for me to respond in order to do their job. And sometimes it is, especially because I'm working with students, I'm teaching students, they need me. For what I'm hearing from your experience is you're engaging in those conversations more mindfully, where you're actually pausing before you respond, you're taking a step back and you're actually thinking about, okay, what is the goal of this email? Why has it been sent to me? How can I respond in a way that is best for me, but also is going to help this person? And the way that you've curated your social media feed in a way that is inspiring to you, where you're engaging mindfully. And maybe it's helping you with creative pursuits or it's motivating you in ways as opposed to you're watching a, 7-second short video and then you're just mindlessly scrolling to the next over and over and over. So you're consuming a lot of material, but not getting any benefit of it. It sounds like you are very intentional about curating that feed, recognizing that it is a highlight reel, but you've curated it in such a way that it is of benefit to you. It's inspiring to you. And I liked that you recognize it as a play or a dance between two parties. That's a beautiful way of thinking about it. Thank you for sharing that.
thank you,
Great.
Kate. Thank you.
Stephen.
Hi,
Hi.
I just wanted to respond to Jigna said she had an experience of joy when somebody responded to her email. And I was thinking in the last couple of years, I've noticed that more and more people do not respond to
Mm.
phone messages, to text, to uh, emails. And I was recently teaching at a college, and I'd say to my fellow teachers, I send out messages to my students, they're not responding. And they say, well, they don't respond to emails anymore. They're all on WhatsApp. And then when I do get a response, sometimes people would just say, I've just been too busy.
Mm.
But back in the day, or not too long ago, people would say, Kate, I got your email last week. I'm sorry. I'll get back to you next week. I'm just really busy. But people just don't respond, it seems. And now I'm noticing now I'll get an email or a text saying, "Is it okay if I call you?" Whereas back in the day, I would just call you. If you didn't want to talk to me, I'd get your answering machine, or you would, you know what I mean? We have so many
Yes.
multiple channels now of
It's
communication, but I'm still finding, and I've asked other people, is this just me that other people are noticing? Yeah, people just often don't respond.
Mhm.
So when Jigna said she had a sense of joy, it's like, wow, this person actually responded. Because for me, the norm has been quite the opposite in recent years.
I have the same experience, Stephen, with students of they'll only sort of reach out when they absolutely have to. Um, Perhaps this is
I,
a generational thing and just
I, I think it's worse than that.
mm,
I think our technology misuse,
hmm
again, my experience has made us very passive.
mm,
Has basically taken spontaneity out of our lives.
mm,
We've become we at least I have, or I feel I lean into it, that predictable is what people
mm,
are embracing through the misuse of technology. There's
mm.
giving up there, and it's not my thought. I mean, it's been talked about by others. That the misuse of technology is really undermining our ability to feel welcome, to be spontaneous and creative.
Hmm.
I would like to add something here. I have also experienced where people don't respond. So, something that has been helpful is I would drop in a line of, I just wanted to check in
Mm.
if you're okay. And I just leave that as an open-ended question for the person to really reflect on. But then I don't expect anything when I drop that line.
Mm.
And it was interesting where someone mentioned that I love it when someone just checks in to say, "How are you?" I just called to check in, and I might have a million emails and I've not responded to you, but that feels very connected in the heart that someone cared for me and just dropped in a line. Just wanted to check in if you're okay.
It's a
So,
lot. It's a reach out. It's an olive branch. It's an extension of I do care for you, a way
yeah,
of connecting with others. Yes,
yeah.
it's beautiful. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing your experiences, everyone. Now we are going to talk about some speed bumps in the last few minutes that I have you. Speed bumps are meant to encourage you to slow down and help you regain a little bit more control over your devices. So you're using them with more intentionality. So the first is obviously setting some boundaries, setting some clear boundaries between your work life or your digital life and your personal life. So this could be anything from limiting your screen time to turning off non-essential push notifications during certain hours so that you're not constantly disrupted. There was a study that was done back in 2017 out of the University of Michigan where they found that more than 80% of the college students that attended at the time said that they experienced phantom vibrations, pings, or calls from their tech devices. Because we usually hear, right? If you hear a ping from someone's phone, if you're at the grocery store, you're at a restaurant, cafe, they're always so loud that sometimes we feel like it might be our own device. Setting specific times too to check email messages on your phone or your laptop. For me, I always check my emails at designated times throughout the day. So I always check it first thing in the morning at 9, and then again at 1 p.m. after lunch, and then just before I close my laptop around 4:30. I also like to have device-free zones in our home. So no phones in the bedroom, no phones at the dining room table, and then designated charging stations we have on our island away from main rooms in our home where we're connecting with each other. So kitchen table is a no-fly zone. When you're watching a movie with your partner, actually watching it There's great research that's being done on second screens right now, where a lot of programs and movies that are being created right now, they will recap excessively to the next episode because they are competing. These television shows or movies are competing with your attention. A lot of us are on our devices or on our phones at the same time as we're watching a TV series. So we need that excessive recap for the next episode because we've missed so many of the main pieces of the show. We don't know what's happening or what has happened. One of my favorite technology speed bumps to use is to switch your phone's display from color to grayscale. You can do this by going to Settings, Accessibility, and Color and Motion, and it'll turn it into basically like an old-fashioned facsimile. It makes it very unattractive, and you feel less inclined to actually check. And then I love setting digital detox periods where I take designated breaks from devices or social media, where maybe you set specific hours in your day where you completely disconnect. And this will give you time back so you can recharge. Sabbaticals are longer periods of time away from your digital devices. So maybe during a weekend, you take a full day on a Saturday or a Sunday, or during your vacation time, you tell yourself you're not going to check your email. A really great book around digital detox and digital sabbaticals is a book called 24/6 by Tiffany Schlein, and she talks about the changes that happened in her own family when they stopped checking their devices one day out of the week. Another thing that I wanted to share here is Dr. Lisa Nisbet's research. She works out of Trent University, and she introduces this great concept called nature relatedness, which is our emotional and cognitive connection to nature, including our feelings of connectedness, appreciation, and responsibility or stewardship towards the natural world. And her research shows us that people who have high levels of nature relatedness are less likely to engage in excessive or harmful technology use. And then some other pieces are obviously practicing time management. The Pomodoro technique is a really great technique to implement. Pausing and asking yourself the three W's, WWW. So, what am I doing this for? Why am I picking up my device? What's the goal here? Why am I doing it right now? And what else could I be doing? Regularly reflecting on your digital habits. I do have some journal prompts on my website that you're more than welcome to download. They're completely free, and they're a great way to engage in some more mindfulness ways, really thinking about how you're using your devices in ways that might be mindful versus mindless. And the last piece here is creating an analog basket. And this is your homework for the day. So, an analog basket looks a little bit like this, could be any basket that you have, and it's filled with things that are tactile that require you to stay off of your devices. So, I've got a yoga mat in here. I've got cards in here that I will write out to friends, family. My mom made this. My mom's a local artist, and she makes these really beautiful index cards where when you go for a mindfulness or an awe walk, you write down something that you've noticed that you haven't noticed in a long time. I've got a candle making kit in here, actual physical books, journals, Sudoku puzzles. So anytime you feel compelled to reach for your digital device, you can reach for your analog basket instead. And let us remember to be all in when we are in person with each other. Studies tell us time and time again that the mere presence of a phone is enough to decrease the quality of a conversation that we have one-on-one with each other. And just some final thoughts here is everyone's needs and work environments look very different. So experiment with some different practices, tools, and techniques. Reclaim the hours you spend on your screen, and you will find that your possibilities expand. This is your life. What do you want to pay attention to? And I will leave you with this question today. How will you engage in digital wellness? And what is one thing you will do that will bring you that much closer to digital wellness today? I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to see pictures of your analog baskets. You can connect with me through Instagram. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. And obviously, my website, there's a contact form if you want to email me and chat a little bit more. But thank you so much, Denise, and thank you all for being here today. And thank you for sharing your wonderful thoughts and your own journeys with technology.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today at Mindfulness Toronto, Kate, and really sharing some practical strategies that we can implement today to reclaim presence in this digital age. And I love the analog basket and also the cell phone meditation. So definitely going to be using that on a regular basis. Thank you so much.